Chodesh Tov. Chodesh Tov. It's Rosh Chodesh today, and I hope you had a great Hallel this morning. And if you didn't have Hallel yet, so we can pray Hallel until sunset, not like the rest of Shacharit that has a special time for it. Hallel can be said until the evening. And Musaf, if anybody prayed. And don't forget when you eat to say Alev Yavo, which is a special prayer that we say on the holidays and on Rosh Chodesh. So it's a big day today. There are only not 12 of these in the year, a little more because sometimes we have 2 days of Rosh Chodesh, but it's still a very special day. So Chodesh Tov to everybody. Today we're going to go out of the regular learning to learn about Shavuot, which will start on Thursday night this week. And since it wasn't part of the studies until now, this is a good opportunity to talk about Shavuot, as we did on Pesach and other occasions, that we didn't have a whole unit about the holidays, but we're saving the classes before the holidays to speak about them. So today we will speak about Shavuot. And there's a lot to speak about, so we'll move swiftly. Yes. So Shavuot is one of the 3 holidays that all the people of Israel used to come to Jerusalem and to circle around the temple and to bring a special offering called the Korban Chagiga, the offering of the holiday. Actually, I will just say, because it's not very well known, the word Chag, when we say Chag Shavuot, Chag Pesach, the word Chag in Hebrew means circle, to circle around. And the reason we call it a circle, a Chag, because all the people of Israel would come to the Temple Mount and circle the temple. So that's the origin of the word Chag. And they would bring a Korban Chagiga, an offering of the circling, that circle. And in Hebrew nowadays, every celebration is called a Chagiga. And people think that it's connected to dancing in circles. But the origin is really from these 3 holidays that the people of Israel will come and circle around the temple. And Chag Shavuot is the second holiday if we count from Pesach. Pesach is the first, Shavuot is the second, and Sukkot is the third. And we are celebrating those 3 in similar ways. Of course, every holiday has its own theme and his own idea behind it. And today we will learn about the idea of Shavuot. So Shavuot has 4 names, even in a way 5 names, and they are very significant. And we will go through all the names, and by that also understand a little more about the nature of the holiday. I want to say from the beginning that most of us know Shavuot as Chag Matan Torah, as a holiday that the Torah was given in, and we will talk about it, I hope, a little bit at length. But that's not the main idea of Shavuot as it is presented in the Torah. Actually, in the Torah, nowhere does it say that the Torah was given on Shavuot. And Shavuot has other purposes and other ideas that we will see in a moment. And like every holiday, Shavuot has an agricultural aspect and a religious aspect. We saw it also on Pesach. We spoke about it. On Sukkot, I didn't give the shiur, so I don't know if it was mentioned, but it also, all our holidays have an agricultural idea that is connected to the fact that we were a nation of people who worked the land, and working the land took a very major place in our culture and in our tradition. And it was also, in a way, an understanding that the fruit and the vegetables and the wheat, everything comes from God. And when we are planting, when we are working the land, it is working the holy land, the land that God gave us to work it. And there's a bond between the people of Israel and God concerning the land, knowing that if we will act as God asked us to act, then we will get rain and we will be able to work the land. And if not, the land will throw us out. We see it in many different instances in the Torah talking about it, that it's not only God who will throw us out, but the land itself has a factor in it that it can't stand evil, can't stand people who dwell on it that are doing evil. So the agricultural part of Shavuot is a very, of all the holidays, is a very basic and important part of the holiday. And of course, with every holiday, we have also a spiritual, religious, ceremonial aspect that is combined. Yes, Silke.
It's a little bit of a side note, but it's just this idea of like asking God for something. It's a little bit like a Santa Claus in heaven. So like if I act nicely and I ask for something and I don't get it, then I can also get resentment, right? So where do you see the connection between trusting God and then asking for stuff?
That's a big question.
Sorry.
No, it's a great question. I think maybe we can speak about it in the end of the class, because I really want to just make sure that we go over the Shavuot curriculum, okay? But after the class, I'd be very happy to answer this. So the first name of of Chag HaShavuot, as we see, is Chag HaShavuot. What is Shavuot? Shavuot in Hebrew, Shavua is week, and Chag HaShavuot means the holiday of the weeks. And we see in the first source, Sheshet Yamim Tochal Matzot. For 6 days you shall eat matzot, and on the 7th day there shall be a halt to the Lord your God. You shall not do any work on it. You shall not do any work on it. Right. So that's Pesach. We know about Pesach. We know about the 7th day of Pesach, which is a special holiday. Also, we've been through that a few months ago. Now he continues on. You shall count 7 weeks for yourself. From the time the sickle is first put to the standing crop, you shall begin to count 7 weeks. So that also we know, we're in the midst of that, right? Every day we're counting a day since the 2nd day of Pesach. We're counting, we're still counting. And you shall perform the festival of weeks to the Lord your God, the donation you can afford to give, according to how the Lord your God shall bless you. So this is a very vague description of what the holiday is, right? You have to count 7 weeks, and then you celebrate a festival, or you perform a festival of weeks. And the only hint that we are given to the nature of the holiday is that it's the donation you can afford to give. So there's something you're giving. It doesn't specify yet what, right? And the idea is that it has to be 7 weeks after Pesach. And actually, this is very significant in Shavuot. Shavuot is the only holiday that we don't have a specific date on. It doesn't say on this and this date you should have Shavuot anywhere. It always says it's 7 weeks after Pesach. And there was a big debate on it because the question is, what is exactly after Pesach, right? And in a different source that we quote every time we count the Omer, we say, "Mimochorat haShabbat tisperu 50 yom." You shall count after the Sabbath, you will count 50 days. And there was a question, what is after the Sabbath? And there was a group in the land of Israel, which were called Karaim, those who read the Torah literally and didn't take into account the rules of how to do drashot, how to learn from the Torah things beside what is written literally. And they started counting from the Shabbat, from the Sunday after Pesach, because they read Mechulat Shabbat literally. And so our rabbis said that Mechulat Shabbat means after the Pesach, and we're counting 50 days. But the idea here of Shavuot is the counting itself, the counting after Pesach. And in a way, I added here the word atzeret. The word atzeret here in the pasuk we see it that it's talking about the 7th day of Pesach. In a different source, also Shavuot is called atzeret, and we know that we have another atzeret, right? The Shmini atzeret, right? On Sukkot, the 8th day of Sukkot is also called an atzeret. What is an atzeret? Atzeret in Hebrew is from the word atzar, to stop. And every holiday, we have a holiday that stops or that finishes the holiday. So on Sukkot, we have the holiday of Sukkot. The 8th day of Sukkot is Shmini Atzeret, is a holiday that finishes that holiday, the Sukkot. On Pesach, we also have the holiday of Pesach, and we have the 7th day is called an Atzeret. And Shavuot, which is also significant in the sense that it's not 7 days like Pesach and Sukkot, right? Shavuot, which is 1 day, and in outside of Israel, it's 2 days. We will touch it upon it later. It's not 7 days; it's 1 day, and it's called in the Torah Atzeret. And in a way, what our sages talk about is that the holiday of Pesach actually didn't finish yet. And that the fact that we are expected to count 7 weeks from Pesach means that Pesach is, in a way, it also has an Atzeret after the 7th day, but in a way it's also a whole period between Pesach and Shavuot. And the Atzeret of Shavuot is finishing this whole period from Pesach to Shavuot. So it's called Atzeret, and I put it in here because the name Atzeret is also part of this idea of time. We don't have yet a very clear content of what it is, Shavuot. The Torah makes a big deal out of saying it is happening 7 weeks after Pesach. That's the definition. Yes, Mia.
Yes. if I remember correctly, and you can definitely correct me, the Torah does not say that it's from Pesach. It says something about the harvest, that we should count from the harvest, and then the sages of the Talmud determined that it should be Pesach, right? Is that correct?
Yes. We bring the Omer. We bring the first. How do you call it? The first part of the wheat. The first wheat we're bringing the day after Pesach, and this is specifically written in the Torah. It has to be the day after Pesach, and from that day we are counting 7 weeks. So you're absolutely right.
Okay, thank you.
But it's still important to underline that it's also in the Torah. It's specifically saying it's right after Pesach. So the only date that we have for all this deal is Pesach. The day after Pesach, as you're saying, is when you bring the Omer, the first sheaf. I forgot the name. And then 50 days later, we have the Chag Shavuot. Now Shavuot has another day, another name. And this is Chag HaKatzir. Chag HaKatzir, the festival of the harvest. You shall observe the festival of unleavened bread. So that's Pesach again. It's always connected. For 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread as I have commanded you at the appointed time of the month of springtime. For then you left Egypt. And they shall not appear before me empty-handed. That's Pesach. And the festival of the harvest, the first fruits of your labors, which you will sow in the field, and the festival of the ingathering at the departure of the year, when you gather in the products of your labors from the field. 3 times during the year, all your males shall appear before the Master, the Lord. So this is also mentioning the regel, right? Mentioning coming to Jerusalem 3 times a year in those 3 festivals. And this is a purely agricultural outline of the 3 holidays, right? It's not mentioning it mentions getting out of Egypt, but in the sense that this is the time of spring, right? And there is the festival of the harvest, when you gather the first fruit that you have, and the festival of ingathering when the year departures. That's obviously Sukkot. So here Shavuot is mentioned as the festival of the harvest. You planted, it grew, it went through the whole winter and through the springtime, and then the wheat and the other fruit. There was fruit, and it grew, and it's ready now, and we are celebrating the harvest. So this is the second mention of. It's not. I'm not giving it exactly in order, but this is the second name, the name of Shavuot as the holiday of harvest, Chag HaKatzir. Then we have maybe the most central and most important aspect of Chag HaShavuot during the time of the Torah. Shavuot, and we already saw it in the previous source that it's connected to the bikurim, to the first fruit. We saw it mentioned in the previous source as well. And it says here, Beshavuotechem, on your festival of weeks, you are bringing a new meal offering to the Lord. And the way that it's explained, we have a whole Mishnah tractate, Masechet Bikurim, explaining how these things were done, how this was done when anybody who had plants, had trees, had fruit, or had wheat that he grew, he would see the first fruit. He would put a sign around it. He would put a little string around it to remember that this fruit is the first fruit. And when it was ripe, he will bring the fruits to Jerusalem. There was, from every village and every city, a group of people who would go to Jerusalem, and there's a whole description in the Mishnah how beautiful it was. They would go with instruments and with singing, and they would put decorations on the oxes that would bring the fruit to Jerusalem, and this was a major thing. And it's if you imagine this, that a person is working in his field, and he finds the first fruit, and he realizes that this fruit doesn't belong to him. He will go and eat it in Jerusalem before God, thanking God for the new crops that he has. This is something amazing. And if we know that that Pesach is in the beginning of the springtime, then Shavuot is really the time when things get ripe. It's exactly, in Israel, it's even more noticeable this time now. That is really the midsummer. It's becoming really hot, and the fruit are becoming ripe. You can see the grapes and figs and many different fruits that are just, you can pick up and eat when you go around in Israel. So this is a major thing, and I brought here also another description of from the Torah, what happens when you bring Bikurim. That's the second source on the left. I will just read it. Read it fast. And it will be when you come into the land which the Lord your God gives you for an inheritance, and you possess it and settle in it, that you shall take of the first of all the fruit of the ground which you will bring from your land, which the Lord your God is giving you, and you shall put them into a basket and go to the place where the Lord your God will choose to have his name dwell there. And you shall come to the Kohen who will be serving in those days, and say to him, I declare this day to the Lord your God that I have come to the land which the Lord swore to our forefathers to give us. And the Kohen will take the basket from your hand, laying it before the altar of the Lord your God. And it's going on in those psukim. You can see in Parashat Kitavo, in the book of Deuteronomy, there's a whole ceremony that is beautiful about what exactly a person should say when he brings the Bikurim. And it's true that not everybody brought the Bikurim on the holiday of Shavuot. The holiday of Shavuot started the season of Bikurim. Some of the people brought the Bikurim along when they came for Shavuot, for the Regel, for the mitzvah of coming to Jerusalem, and some brought their Bikurim later. But Shavuot is opening the season of Bikurim. So all of those things are in the Torah. What's not in the Torah is maybe the main idea that we have nowadays, when we don't have Beit Mikdash, when we don't have when we don't have bikurim, and we definitely, most of us are not don't have fields to work and to harvest, and so there is another meaning to it. And actually this meaning is pretty simple, because when you're counting, the Torah gives us a very specific description of the timeline between getting out of Egypt and arriving to Mount Sinai to receive the Torah. And there are some questions of it, if it's 49 days, 50 days, 51 days, but it's for sure in this timeline, in those 50 days after getting out of Egypt. And so it's not a question that Shavuot has everything to do with Matan Torah, and that when it was said to count 50 days from getting out of Egypt, we got to the day that God gave us the Torah. The question is, why is it not mentioned specifically? Why is this something that we have to count by ourselves and to check out by ourselves, to realize by ourselves? And it didn't take us long to realize it. Already from the very early sources that we have post Torah, the early sources that later on became Midrash and Mishnah, we see that the sages are very clear that this is the day of Matan Torah. So the peculiar thing is, why isn't it mentioned in the Torah? Why doesn't it say on the day of giving the Torah, this was Shavuot? If anybody has an answer, I would love to hear it.
It has something to do with that you should appreciate the Torah every day and not on a fixed time. So it's something you do all the time, every day. I think it has something to do with that.
So if it would have been specified that the giving of the Torah was on Shavuot, we wouldn't have appreciated the Torah every day, or not enough?
You would have appreciated, but you still do it every day. So I think it's that you appreciate the Torah and use the Torah. You do it every day, so you don't need a fixed time for it in some way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. That's an interesting view. Any other ideas? So I will just give one of the answers that I read in one of the Hasidic books, that they say that this is exactly the point of the counting. That, right, we said in the beginning that the first aspect of Shavuot is an aspect that actually doesn't really have content, right? You just count for the sake of counting. And maybe it is connected. Maybe the side of Shavuot as the counting holiday, and maybe it's not surprising that nowadays the most common name of Chag HaShavuot is Chag HaShavuot, the holiday of counting, is because God didn't want to state that the Torah will come on the holiday of Shavuot, and he didn't want also to state backwards that you should know that after you counted 49 days, you got the Torah. He wants us to be in the counting, to be in the preparation, And in the spiritual sense, we get somewhere, we're not sure where we're getting. What we're doing is we're counting, we're putting ourselves into a process that starts when Pesach starts, when we got out of Egypt, and every day makes a change. In the end, we get to the 50th day, we are ready to receive the Torah, not because we know that we're going to receive the Torah. Well, we know it, but in the spiritual sense, we don't. This is not what the Torah wanted to say. The Torah, or Hashem, wanted us to count, and when we finish the counting, naturally the Torah comes. Yes, Dan.
Yes, I want to just ask about, we also counting 7 times 7 is 49. Is it also, maybe it's connected to the number 49, which is 7 to 7. That means that this is every day in the week, because in Shabbat we saying 6th day and Shabbos. So here connecting the days.
Yes, thank you. It is very connected. We will not go into the whole idea of Sfirat HaOmer. I think we spoke about it. There was a shiur about it already. But absolutely, you're right. And 7 is not only 7 days, right? We have 7 years, that is Shemitah, and 49 years, which is the Jubilee. And we have quite a few places where we count around the number 7. So absolutely, I agree with you. Okay, the source that I brought in here, I didn't find a translation in English, and it's also not that important. Well, everything is important, but I just this is one of the source that our sages say, just very simply, that this is the day of Matan Torah. You see it in the one before last line. ולמה לא נאמר שעיר חטאת בחג השבועות? לפי שהוא יום מתן תורה, והתורה היא מכפרת כקורבן, לכך לא נאמר בו חטאת הכיפורים. So there's a specific question here. On all the holidays, offerings are including an offering of chatat, an offering of asking for forgiveness for a sin. And Shavuot doesn't have that. And the sages realized that and asked why. We have it in every other holiday. Why don't we have it in Shavuot? And the answer that they give is that this is the day of the giving of the Torah, Yom Matan Torah, and the Torah itself is annihilates the sin, or forgives, enables us to leave the sin. And therefore, we don't have to bring a sin offering. The Torah itself is instead of the offering. So it's also a nice idea, and it's also one of the earlier sources that the holiday of Shavuot is the holiday of Matan Torah. At this point, I thought I would talk a little bit about the idea of the Torah and giving the Torah. But I don't think we have a lot of time, and it's something that everybody should do and look before the holiday of Shavuot. Learn about the Torah. Not only learn Torah, what we're doing now, learning halakha, learning the laws of the Torah, learning the stories of the Torah, but learning about the Torah, learning about what is the Torah, how does God see the Torah as a present for us, how does God see the relationship between God, the people of Israel, and the Torah, and many other sides of what exactly is the Torah in Jewish thought and in the Jewish sources and spiritually. Anybody who goes to the Wednesday shiur on Pirkei Avot, many of the Mishnayot there talk about this, the essence of the Torah. What is it? What is the Torah? What is the Torah for us? What does it stand for? So you can look in Pirkei Avot again. You can open up Midrash Rabbah. You see that in the source here, in the end, you see it's written Midrash Rabbah. Look at Midrash Rabbah about the Torah on Parashat Yitro, the parasha that talks about giving the Torah. And if anybody wants other sources from the Rambam, from Chassidut, from almost everybody wrote things about that. And before Shavuot, we should really get into learning about that. At least this is my advice. Okay, so now we finished with the names and with the overall, and we're going into the holiday of Shavuot. So as we said, the holiday of Shavuot is 1 day. It's not 7 days. We have 1 day, and in outside of Israel, it's 2 days. And this year, we have a special thing that it's the second day is Shabbat, and we will talk about it. So maybe before this, we will go first to this outline of what does Shavuot contain. So first of all, you will probably notice that Shavuot starts later than any other holiday. At least in most communities. In the Malmo community, it's like that. I assume that in most communities it's like that. And this is because on Shabbat and also in other holidays, we are, especially in these parts of the world, we are trying to bring the holiday or the Shabbat as early as possible, because we don't want it to be too late. And so we're making different calculations to understand what is the earliest you can bring in the Shabbat or the holiday with it being considered still the change of the day. On Shavuot, we're not trying to do these calculations, and that's because we have the word tmimot. Usfartem lachem imchurat Shabbat, sheva Shabbatot tmimot, 7 whole weeks. The word tamim means whole, and we want it to be a whole week or a whole day, meaning when it's absolutely the end of the day, when it's absolutely finished. And that's why, by the way, there's a halacha, there's a law that you should say Sfirat HaOmer right when the holiday, right when the stars go out, not before and not after. So it will be tmimot. It will be a whole day. Every day the counting should be a whole. Of course, if you forgot, you can say it later. You can say it also in the day after. But the idea that the word tmimot, the word whole, is in the directives of how to count the 7 weeks, and obviously also the last day, brings forward this idea that we want to do it as whole as possible, and therefore not look for ways to bring Shavuot earlier. The night of Shavuot is a night of Torah learning, and we will go back to it in a second. In many communities, we after the learning evening, you know what? Let's talk about learning evening and then move on. So I'll go back to that. Okay, so once it was established that the Torah was given on Shavuot, the question is, how do you prepare for getting the Torah, for receiving the Torah? And we know that the Torah was received at dawn. That is that we will read it also on Shavuot. We'll read it in the prayer that the Torah was received ba'alot haboker, when the morning was just starting. And there is a midrash that says that the people of Israel weren't preparing so much for that. They were sleeping in their tents, and Moshe had to take them out when the giving of the Torah started. Think about about this scene. It sounds crazy, right? That God starts the trumpets, and it was supposed to be a time where all the Jews are already standing, and Moshe realizes that nobody's there. Everybody's sleeping in the tents, and he starts pulling everybody out, saying, "This is the time now to receive the Torah." And so from that time, our sages already say that there's a need to be prepared to fix this moment in our history where we weren't prepared. So we're preparing, but how are we preparing? So most of the customs throughout the ages was to learn Torah, to learn the Torah, to know what we are getting. The idea that there's a special process that could happen on this night came from the Zohar, came from the Kabbalistic sources. And I just want to read this. This is a quote from the Zohar, or two quotes from two different parts of the Zohar. I don't know how much you are used to this kind of language of mystical Judaism of the Zohar. It's a different kind of expression. We won't explain too much, but just so you will touch upon this, what we are doing in the night of Shavuot. So the Zohar starts by saying what happened before. The early pious ones did not sleep that night, but would be busy themselves with the Torah. So that was how it was being done for ages and ages. And the rabbis of the Mishnah, that's what they did. But the Zohar explains what happened when Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, a rabbi from the time of the Mishnah, he has many quotes in the Mishnah. He had many studies that turned into halachot, into laws. And the Zohar paints all of mystical Judaism around Rabbi Shimon and his group, his students, what they call a chavura. And they gathered to study on Shavuot night, all night, as always. But Rabbi Shimon tells them, maybe we should have a special view of what is being done here. Thus, when I'm reading in the second line, thus, when the rabbis gathered at the home of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai on Shavuot night, he said, "Let us fix the bride's jewelry, so that tomorrow she will be properly adorned before the king. Fortunate is the lot of the learned when the king asks the queen, 'Who fixed your jewelry and burnished your crown?' There is no one in the world who knows how to fix the bride's jewelry other than the scholars. Fortunate is their lot in this world and the next." And this translation, the word scholars is very bad. I don't think this is the right translation here. I didn't see exactly this word. It's not the scholars, it's the friends, those who are part of this learning group. So you don't have to be a scholar for that. The fact that we are sitting and learning before Shavuot, it's not only, or I would say even more, it's not at all about having more knowledge of the Torah. That is what we're doing all year long. On Shavuot, the learning of the Torah is fixing the bride's jewelry. If the Torah is the bride, and we have sources about how the Torah and Torah is the bride, and the people of Israel are the groom, or in other places, God is the groom. There's a wedding going on here on the day of Shavuot, when the people of Israel are receiving the Torah again and fixing the bride's jewelry. This is what we do on the night before, making it beautiful, making it something. The bride is the bride without us, but we are fixing her jewelry. We are dedicating the time to make it to make it even more beautiful with our own abilities, whatever limited our abilities are. And so learning on the holiday of Shavuot is fixing the bride's jewelry. So this is one thing that the one source of the Zohar talks about. The other source of the Zohar talks about another incident. Rabbi Shimon and all the rabbis were joyfully studying the Torah on Shavuot night. Each of them shared original insights, and Rabbi Shimon rejoiced along with them. Rabbi Shimon said to them, "My children, fortunate is your lot. Tomorrow the bride will enter the wedding canopy, and only you will accompany her. All those who now preparing the bride and sharing her joy will be written in the book of remembrance. God will bless them with the 70 blessings and crowns of the supernatural world." So again, if we were part of decorating the bride, so we're also the ones who are bringing their under the canopy. In other sources, the Zohar describes how the Torah itself, the soul of the Torah, revealed herself to the students of Rabbi Shimon while they were learning on Shavuot, thanking them for studying her and for dealing with her on the night before her wedding. So this is not a regular learning. It's what the Kabbalists are calling tikkun. A tikkun is a fixing, is some kind of a ceremony that does something in the worlds that we can't really explain. Practically, the idea is to deal with the Torah with whatever way you can. So if you can't stay up all night, that's fine. If you read only one pasuk, this is also a tikkun. If you go to a shiur, it's amazing. If you're learning by yourself, it's even more amazing. There are some who read the tikkun itself, a book that the Kabbalists gathered, where it's not at all about understanding. It's a little book that has the beginning of every book in the Torah and every book in the Bible, every Mishnah that we have, and other sources, the beginning of the end of each parasha, each book, and each tractate of Mishnah. And when you say it all together, you feel like you're having all the Jewish sources in your hand. You know what you're receiving the next night. So the next morning. So this tikkun is a great big thing. It should be done out of a lot of happiness. If anybody here is not a night owl but a day person, then you shouldn't suffer with that. You should go to sleep and have much joy the next morning in receiving the Torah itself. But know that this is an option, and this is a very, very special night to try and have this kind of experience. In Israel, at least in Jerusalem, where I am from, Shavuot night is a night where there are, I would say, hundreds of shiurim in different places, different synagogues, different institutions. And you can see all night groups and groups, thousands of people who will go from one shiur to the other, from one learning session to the other, from one learning group to the other, all night, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. And then when it gets closer to sunrise, thousands of people walk to the Kotel, to the Western Wall, It's just a magnificent sight to see. If you any time have the opportunity to be in Israel for Chag Shavuot, you should go to Jerusalem and have this experience. Walking before dawn to the Kotel, thousands of people from all over Jerusalem walk in groups to the Kotel and daven Shacharit right in the brink of day. What happened? Okay. So if any of you, I'm not sure how much we should go over it because I assume that most communities here don't have learning sessions until morning, but I'll just say a few words about that just so you will know that this is an option. Basically, every person, every day, the best time to say Shema or to say the prayer is on the first split second that it's possible. It's called Vatikim, to pray in the break of dawn. And this is a big mitzvah. And in many places it says that this is the basic way to pray Shacharit. And you're waking up in the morning, a little bit before morning, and you say the Amidah right when the main of the prayer, the Amidah, right when it's dawn. And this is called Tfilah Kevatikin. Vatikin in Hebrew is like the old people, or like the people who did it traditionally. And on Shavuot, since many people learn all night, they pray Vatikin. So this is an option for everybody. Of course, if you don't have a minyan on Vatikin, it's better to pray later and be able to hear the Torah and be able to hear Kaddish and Kedusha and all the things that you could do only in a minyan. But if you happen to have in your community a group that studies all night and then has a prayer in Vatikin, it's a magnificent experience. There are different opinions in the rabbis. If someone is learning all night and then he's too tired for praying Vatikin, what's better, to stay all night and be tired at Vatikin, or to go to sleep and wake up in Vatikin and pray with a lot of kavanah? But at least to try it once a year, also not sleeping all night and also praying with kavanah and Vatikin, it's an experience that should be tried. There are different rules for someone who didn't sleep all night regarding Birkot HaShachar, the morning blessings, because if you didn't sleep all night, there are a few things that are not true. For instance, Elohai Neshama, we don't say the prayer about how God brought back our soul. It's not true because we didn't sleep. The soul never got back to God. Washing the hands, if we didn't sleep, then we don't have to wash our hands specifically in the morning because we didn't go to sleep. There is a discussion about the Torah blessings. Are we supposed to say the blessings of the Torah since we studied Torah all night? It's not a new thing all of a sudden. And most rabbis rule that we do say Birkot Torah because the Torah is every day anew, and we thank God for every day anew. The rest of the blessings we say as usual in the morning blessings. The Torah reading, we're having two books taken out. On one, we read the story of Matan Torah on Parashat Yitro, the story of the giving of the Torah. And the second, we are reading about the Bikurim, as we spoke about. After the reading of the Torah, and in some communities it will be before the prayer of Shacharit or after the prayer of Shacharit, but most communities do it after the reading of the Torah, we read the book of Ruth, the scroll of Ruth. And sorry, yeah, we have 3 more minutes. We're reading the scroll of Ruth. It is also very interesting to think why we're reading the scroll of Ruth, and there's much to talk about the book of Ruth. I urge you to learn it and to read it deeply. If you're in a conversion process, then it's even more meaningful for you, probably, since Ruth is our first convert. And there's a lot to think about it, that the great-grandmother of King David was a converted Jew. And it all happens on the days of Ktsir Chitim, the days of the harvest, so it's connected also in the time of year. And there are many other connections, things that are connected to accepting the Torah and so on and so forth. Look it up, and be sure to hear the scroll of Ruth in the synagogue on Shavuot Day. Don't forget Ya'aleh V'Yavo and Hallel, which we say on the holidays, of course. There is a very, very, very wide minhag to eat dairy food, since the Torah is resembling milk in many different ways. Also here, if we had time, we would have gotten into it at length. But there is a very wide minhag to eat dairy food, cheesecakes or any of the sort. I want to mention here that there are opinions among in the halacha that if we didn't eat meat, then we didn't fully fulfill the mitzvah of happiness through food. And so, of course, if you're a vegetarian and you don't eat meat anyway, anytime, this does not apply to you. It's not, it doesn't make you happy. But for those who eat meat on Shabbat and on other festivals, because that's what makes it a festive meat, there are many opinions who say you have to eat meat also on Shavuot. And then it's a tricky way how to do it, because we can't mix milk and meat, of course, and of course we shouldn't eat the meat and then the milk, because then we will have to wait a lot. If you're eating milk and then meat, just make sure that you first eat the milk, you take everything out of the table, and you bring in new plates and spoons and forks and everything, and then eat the fleishik, the meat dish. And most rabbis say that you should at least wash your mouth if you're eating meat and milk so close to each other. Washing the mouth doesn't have to be with water. Also, if you drink some tea or some juice, some like to have some alcoholic beverage between them, to make sure that the milk is not between the teeth and is already swallowed and inside the body, and then start eating the meat. And on the second day of Shavuot, which is Shabbat, there's Yizko. We're saying Yizko, prayer for our loved ones that are not with us anymore. If anybody doesn't know what Yizko is exactly, then please welcome to ask afterwards, because it's something that we all should know. It's now 10:32, so anybody who feels like they want to leave, it's absolutely fine. I just wanted to go through one last thing, which is being talked about already in the classes. So if you know that already, yeah, everybody here should have heard about it. I'm just reminding it about it because this is just to make sure that you know. So a few rules about Yom Tov and the difference between Yom Tov and Shabbat, and something about the fact that the second day of Yom Tov is Shabbat also. So on Yom Tov, not like Shabbat, any melachot, any jobs that are for food, we're allowed to do. So we're allowed to cook on Yom Tov. We're allowed to cook. We're allowed to open cans, even if we did prepare them before Shabbat. We're allowed to cut very, very, very thin, not like Shabbat that we have to make sure we cut a little wide. On Yom Tov, we can really chop. And any other thing that we might not do on Shabbat, we can do on Yom Tov. Anything for food. The rest of the things are not allowed to do on Yom Tov, but for food, it's fine to do whatever we need, even things that on Shabbat would be considered breaking the Shabbat. That being said, we're not allowed to light fire. And when we're thinking about cooking, this is a tricky element. So we can cook from a fire that is already existing, but we're not allowed to light fire. So if we have a simple gas stove, we need the fire to be on before Yom Tov, or to pass fire, because if I'm passing fire, I didn't light it. I just passed a fire that was already existing. So many people have a long-lasting candle, and we will talk about this long-lasting candle in a minute again. Many people have a long-lasting candle, and they take from the long-lasting candle to the gas stove, making sure that you're not lighting with the igniter, but with the match, which is also a tricky thing. You need to try it at home. It's pretty tricky also because if we make a little mistake, then we really break the holiday by lighting fire. There are many people who prefer not to go into this mess and just cook everything before Yom Tov. I think that it's something that should be tried and it's part of our Judaism that we're allowed to have it and to make sure to practice before Yom Tov in order to see how to light the fire, even if we're not lighting it without starting it. If we have an electric stove, then it should be on already before the Yom Tov. On Yom Tov, we're allowed to make it higher and lower, so we can start the electric stove on a small fire. What we do sometimes is that we put how do you say, a pot with hot water, so the stove won't go off, and it's it's good to have hot water. And then when we have to cook something, we switch from the pot of hot water to a pan or to whatever we need, and we cook and we raise the fire a little more. Yes, Dan.
I just want to ask about in Yom Tov, can we turn on for the electric oven before Yom Tov and let it be turned on 24 hours?
Yes. For the Shabbat, for the food, yes.
Oh, thank you.
So and again, the same way that we can't light a fire, we can't also take out a fire. So also this is a big big deal. How do you take out a fire without taking out a fire? So if you light a match, you shouldn't blow it off. You should let it stay, put it somewhere that it won't burn, and let it stay until it burns out. If you have a stove, there are two best ways to do it. One is to fill a pot with water and let the water overflow and then shut the fire off. Then it didn't happen because we did it, but because the water did it. Or to close the gas that is far away from the stove. And then again, we didn't blow the fire out, we just closed the running of gas. But make sure not to just turn off the fire because you're used to that. Another reason that we need a long-lasting candle is to light candles. Not only on the first day of Yom Tov, on Thursday night, but also on Friday night. And since we can't light candles from new, we have to pass fire from an existing fire. Then we should use this long-lasting candle to light fire. Every time that we have, this is the last thing, and then I'll have room for questions. Every time that a Shabbat and a Yom Tov is connected, when there's first Yom Tov and then we go into Shabbat, either when the second day is Yom Tov, the second day of Yom Tov is Shabbat, or if after the second day of Yom Tov there is immediately Shabbat, we need to do Eruv Tavshilin. Eruv Tavshilin means that I would be able to cook on Yom Tov for Shabbat, or for the second day of Yom Tov. And there's a problem to cook for a day that is not the Yom Tov. And therefore we need to do Eruv Tavshilin. Eruv Tavshilin means that before Yom Tov, I'm already preparing a meal for the Shabbat. And since I'm preparing this and I'm declaring that this preparation is for the Shabbat afterwards, what I'm doing during the Yom Tov is continuing that preparation that I started already before the Yom Tov. It's called Eruv Tavshilin. And the way to do it is to designate a small part of a meal that I will eat on Shabbat. It should be some kind of a cooked dish and a loaf of bread. And to designate it, you can look up in the internet or in your Sidurim. There's a sentence you have to say to designate those two things for Shabbat, and then you're allowed to cook for Yom Tov, for Shabbat on Yom Tov. For most of the opinions, even if you don't cook from Yom Tov to Shabbat, if you prepare everything before, still you have to do Eruv Tavshilin. Also to remember that there's going to be a difference between Shabbat and Yom Tov. And also, because for many opinions, the candles that we want to light on Friday night, it's fine that we're lighting it from an existing fire, but it's also a preparation. And it's a preparation that is not connected to food. So the way to do it, the way to prepare it, is only if we did Eruv Tavshilin before the holiday, on Thursday afternoon, right before candle lighting. That's what I had to say about Shavuot. We've gone a little too late, so I apologize. May us all have Chag Shavuot Sameach, happy holiday. May we all receive the Torah in a pure heart and in a happy manner, and feel again how grateful we are for God for giving us the Torah and sharing with us His wisdom. And I hope that all of us will be elevated this holiday of Shavuot to another level and get closer to the giver of the Torah, Kadosh Baruch Hu. So, Chag Sameach and Shavuot Tov and Chodesh Tov. And anybody who wanted to ask questions, let's wait until people who wanted to leave will leave, and then I can take questions.
Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach. Thank you so much.
Chag Sameach. Chag Sameach. Yes, anybody has questions, or we can finish? Okay, all the best. Chag Sameach.